All right, welcome back, everyone. Welcome to Terraform time here on the PagerDuty Twitch channel. Today, I'm joined by Alena Pantuzenko, who's a software engineer here at PagerDuty. Alena, say hey, hello.
Hi, and thanks for having me.
No problem. Alena's here to talk about one of the great features that we released on the Terraform provider last week. This is a long-awaited feature that folks have been clamoring for. So PagerDuty as a product has introduced the concept, the idea of event orchestration. And with that feature, we've added that now in a version 2.5.0 into the Terraform provider. So Alena is on the engineering team that created and built event orchestration to the PagerDuty project or product. And then she ran point or lead as the lead engineer for adding it to the Terraform provider. So Alena, how about tell us a little bit about event orchestration, what it does, why we should be excited about it?
Sure. Yeah, so event orchestration, it's a feature that allows you to pretty much control the flow and behavior of your events based on the event payload, the schedule of the day of the week, a date range, the frequency of events that come to our systems. And it allows you to create rules, including nested rules. So a single event, unlike the event rules that are considered a legacy.
So this replaces this is going to be a replacement to those event rules.
Yes.
Right?
So, yeah, and you can create multiple rules that your event will be evaluated against, and those rules can add actions that you can perform against this event. And the actions include whether you want this event to become an incident, or if you want it to stay as a suppressed alert, if you want to suspend the alert so it doesn't notify you until later. You can add such actions as process automation. You can run an automation action that, say, reboots your server, so it will auto resolve. And many more.
Cool. So I hadn't realized that you could do nested rules on event orchestrations. That'll be super interesting to see, and to figure out how to utilize that. I've helped a lot of folks with the previous iterations of event rules, and so I'm excited to see the improvements that event orchestration introduces into the product, but also into the Terraform provider. And so, how about you show us? Would you mind showing us a little bit about kind of event orchestration in action, and kind of explain where folks can find it in the product and kind of how to get started with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just share my screen. Okay. So event orchestration can be found in the main nav under the automation tab right here. So I already have it open, and I have an empty list of I don't have any orchestrations. So one way to edit would be through the UI here. Orchestration 1. Not getting very creative here.
Those are the kind of names I use when I demo as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So here we go. We have so we have an orchestration, and by default, you get an empty list of routes, no routes, and all your events will go to the unrouted path. But you can add a service route. So, for example, if our event matches certain conditions, for example, if the source field of the event contains the word web, it will go, let's do API. Since I have the API service right there, it will go to the API service. And if I go ahead and save this rule, now we can see a single routing rule saying that for events where event source contains API, and we can see it here. Yeah, where it contains API will be a route into the API service. And we can keep adding the routes. So for example, if the source, say, matches part or contains the word DB, or maybe it matches the word DB, then we'll route it to the DB service. By default, like I mentioned earlier, it will go to the unrouted. And say we are only expecting events that have the API or DB in the source. So in the unrouted path, what you can do is you can add a rule that will apply to all events that will say extract the summary. So we'll extract everything from the event summary, and we'll set it to the summary variable. And then we can actually modify the summary field by prefixing it with something catchy like this, needs investigation.
Oh.
And then we can use the summary variable.
Oh, that's handy.
So now anything that doesn't go to a service will be prefixed with that needs investigation phrase. Yeah.
So the unrouted one is one that doesn't necessarily essentially route the event to a specific place. It just does something to it. However, a routed event orchestration, that's what we're calling those, right? These are called event orchestrations.
Yeah, so these are called routes, and
routes.
Yeah, and this is the router page. So this is where we're showing all our routes.
Okay, so the orchestrations are organized by routes.
Yes, this is the almost like the entry point where you decide where your event will be routed to based on, either like the payload, like I mentioned earlier, frequency, date range, schedule.
Got it. Okay, cool. Awesome. So that's how you make them in the web app today. Yeah. How about with Terraform? Like what does that look like to do something like this in Terraform?
Sure. So here I have my Terraform code, and yeah, so what we did as part of 2.5.0, we added the 4 new resources, which is the event orchestration itself, which is pretty much the metadata, where you can provide the name, the description, and the team owning the orchestration or no team. And you can also set the router, unrouted, and service path for the orchestration. And here I have a code. Here I have a snippet of code that will allow you to achieve something similar that I just created, actually even more. So, for example, here we are specifying the name and the description of our Terraformed resource. And down here we have a router pointing to this newly created orchestration. So both router and unrouted, they are children of this orchestration right here.
Okay.
Yeah, so the router will say, for example, router currently only has a single set, and it has to have the ID of start. And here we're saying that, if the source has the word web in it, and if the custom detail is host name has the web-app- in it, we will route to the web service that we had also terraformed earlier. Okay. And we have another rule here. If the source is DB and summary contains database, then we'll route to the other Terraform service, which is the DB service. So, and the catch-all rule, it will just route it to the unrouted. And below, we do have the unrouted resource that is also a child of our orchestration. And say for all rules, even if they, for all events, even if they don't match any rules, we want to set the severity of warning. So we can specify it here in the actions block. And this pretty much mimics the API contract.
And so we can now manage the catch-all rule with the Terraform provider. if we don't set that, is there just a default that's already set when we create an event orchestration, or do we have to set that when we create an event?
We allow for empty actions, but we have to provide the catch-all rule.
Okay, so the catch-all is always required.
Yeah, it's a required block.
Makes sense.
And yeah, and then we have our rules. So, for example, what do I have here? Oh yeah, so this is pretty much mimics what I just created in the UI. So I'm just saying that I'm here, I'm defining a variable. First of all, the rule doesn't have any conditions, which means it will apply to all events. And here I set the summary variable where I extract everything from the summary field. And then I provide an extraction that will set the event summary to this template. So we'll evaluate the variables, we'll find the value of the summary variable, and if it exists, we'll replace it when your event goes through. Yeah, and you will end up with an alert and an incident having this prefix.
Very nice.
Yeah, so this would be the unrouted path. And say once the event is routed to the database service, we want to do something else. We want to provide more rules. So what we can do is we can create a service orchestration that we also have here. Let me go to the, this is the PagerDuty Event Orchestration service resource. The service, we just provide the service ID. Which can also be a hard-coded ID if your service is not a Terraformed resource. And here we also have the start set, where we're saying, for example, if an event comes through on Saturday or Sunday, Eastern time, what we want to do, for example, if I have an automation action configured, which can also be found here. So I don't have anything meaningful here, but say I have an action here that reboots a server. What we can do is we can provide the action ID. And if an event comes through and matches this rule, so if it comes through, if it comes into our system on Saturday or Sunday, we'll invoke an automation action for them. So there is some auto remediation steps they can take, not to page humans.
Nice.
Yeah, and say, for example, if we have more than one event, more than 5 events over 1 minute, it means that something is very broken. Well, then we set the priority to P1. And at the end, if none of that match, but we still want, to provide some extra information, there is an annotate action that will add a comment, a note to the incident. And here we include the operations guide. So we're telling them, okay, go here, open this thing, and it will have all the steps that you can take to fix it. So what I can do is I can go ahead and try to, I guess, Terraform planet and then Terraform apply, and then we can see what happens.
Cool.
Yeah, so it shows, since none of these resources were Terraform before, it shows that it's going to create all of them. And let me go ahead and run Terraform apply. Okay. Now, if we go back to the orchestrations page, we can now see the Terraform orchestration showing the 2 routes, which are the the web app and the DB, the web service and the DB service that we specified in the code. In here, we can see that we added some transformations. So that our event needs more investigation. In the routing rules, I believe we added service orchestration for this service. So here we can see them all. If it happens on the weekend, run an automation action. If it's more than 5 events over 1 minute, set the priority to P1. Otherwise, annotate the incident. Yeah.
Nice. So if you could go back to your HCL, I had a question about one of the fields.
Sure.
For the set ID, tell us more about that one. Because that's something that is new to me as someone who's familiar with event rules from before. The rules and the actions and the conditions, those things make sense, but the set ID is new. So to me anyway. So tell me about that. What values can go there?
Right. So set ID, one ID that's required is the first set has to have the start ID every time. But what we can also do, so sorry, let me just go back to the browser for a second because it may be easier to explain it visually. So when we look at all these rules, like all this column is a representation of a set. So this is rule 1, rule 2, rule 3. But we can also create another set here. We can nest a set. And this is where the concept of nested rules comes in. So if I go back, what I can do is I can actually create another set. And let me just do it here. Let me do set ID equals set 1. And then the rule. Say we also want to annotate and we want to say something routed through set 1 rule 0. And one thing is we don't allow unreachable sets. So if we have the set provided here, we need to make sure one of our rules actually routes to this set. So let me go ahead and try to add this, a route to action to this set.
I see.
Yeah, so we have set 1 here, and let me just do this. Let me actually Terraform plan this. What did I do? Yeah, I didn't wrap it into the actions.
Gotcha.
Okay, let's try again.
Great example of why we do plans, right?
Yes, yes.
Yep.
And why we also don't do auto approve.
Right.
Okay, so let's go back to the UI and see if I reload the page. We can now see that this last rule routes to the second set that also annotates the incident. And you can see here that we created a note that will be added to the incident as well.
Very cool. So you can make a really complex logic tree of like, if this condition is true, we're going to route to this whole set of other rules and go down that.
Yeah, exactly. And we can keep applying the actions on the way. And if there is some conflicting actions, the later action win, but we can layer them this way.
Wow. Interesting. So is there a limit at this point as far as like number of sets that can be in an orchestration or something, or?
I believe there is.
Okay.
I don't want to say
like
there is. There actually is. I don't remember the exact number, and I don't want to lie.
Right, that's good. That's good. That's just fine. We can yeah, I don't know about that's rad though. I love that feature because that's definitely something folks who have used event rules for or in Terraform before. One of the tricky parts was trying to keep things in order, and so each rule had its own endpoint. And so you would set a rule and then with an API call, and you'd set another rule with an API call, set one. And so if you had 100 rules and you decided that you needed to add one at position 50, suddenly all those other 49 rules or whatever after that, they all have to change. But with event orchestration, that's a little different. You want to talk about how the API structure between event rules and orchestration has changed?
Sure, absolutely. So with rules, it's a very granular atomic update, like you mentioned, Scott. So we need to update a single rule. We trigger an HTTP request to a put request to that rule. While here we are pretty much operating on the entire orchestration path level. So the router, unrouted, or service orchestration gets updated as a whole. So you configure it all in your in your Terraform file. And this pretty much results in a single HTTP call. That also reduces conflicts.
Yeah. I think people will be excited about that. That's definitely a pain point that users have had, where trying to keep things in order, but then also getting diffs and perpetual diffs, because it's sitting there trying to update it every time they run a Terraform apply and things like that. So
yeah, and this this way you pretty much have control of the order of your rules by providing them in the order you want them in.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to set them all up at once, and then in the same definition that you have with your rules, you're going to you'll define all your rules in one shot, in one definition inside of an orchestration. Or actually, an orchestration has routers, and the routers refer to an orchestration. And so you would define them in a router.
An orchestration would have a single router that will contain multiple routes. So the route also, routing rules. Yeah.
Okay. And then inside each route is a series of sets. Yes?
Inside each route, each route would represent a service orchestration, and the service orchestration can have multiple sets, and each set can have multiple rules. Yeah.
So an orchestration has sets, and sets have rules.
Yes, correct.
Okay. That's cool.
So, yeah, this is a set, and this is a set, currently with a single rule.
Got it. Oh, okay. And so listed in the UI, the sets are the vertical, the sets are essentially in a column, and then all the rules are in that set. You can see them listed down the page vertically.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Okay. Right on. I'm excited. I'm excited to see this as part of the Terraform provider, but then also I think it'll really, it not only like fixes some of the things that people are having troubles with the previous iteration of event rules, but adding this nested feature, I think is going to be super powerful for folks.
Yes, for sure. And that was the limitation of event rules, where once the first rule matches, you can't really do much else. Well, here you can apply multiple rules.
Very cool. Very cool. Is there anything else about the event orchestration that you wanted to share with us, or in adding it to the provider?
Well, it was very fun adding it to the provider. It was it was a learning curve for us. As for event orchestration as a feature, for those of you who haven't worked with it, there is a knowledge base where you can find all the information. And since event orchestration supports PCL, it stands for PagerDuty condition language. I strongly encourage you to go ahead and play around with it, because it's much more powerful than the event rule conditions. You can now it becomes more mathy. You can actually have greater than, less than. It works with dates. It works with date ranges. It works with schedules. Yeah, with the trigger count. And it's just like it gives you more power and flexibility to what you can do with your events.
That's great. That's great. I'm glad we already have it in the developer documentation, so folks can find it there and get more information. In fact, we might have to have you back on to tell us all about this PCL language to figure out some examples of how we can best take advantage of that.
Sure. Yeah, I think there will be something at the summit around that. So
there you go. There's a good plug for Summit. So all of you who'd like to know a little bit more about PCL or PagerDuty configuration language, you said, or conditional language?
Condition language.
Condition language. There will be some sessions, or a session, I'm not sure, at Summit. So be sure to sign up, register, so that you can learn firsthand from the folks who create it and who are experts in it on how you can best take advantage of event orchestration and figuring out how to get your rules to do exactly what you want them to do. Well, cool. Well, Alena, thanks so much for coming on the show today. This has been super educational for me. Hopefully it's been educational for the folks who have been here. Yep. And thanks, Mandy, for posting the link in the chat. Sign up for Summit at that link there in the chat at Summit, PagerDuty Summit.eventinfinity. I probably didn't say that right, but .co, but it's there in the chat. So be sure to click on that there. And we look forward to seeing you folks at Summit and at our next events that we have going on here on Twitch. Be sure to keep an eye out on Twitch, also with our podcast. And as I mentioned, did I mention Summit yet? Let's all sign up for Summit. So thanks again, Alena, and thank you all for joining us. And I'm Scott McAllister, and I'm wishing all of you an uneventful day.
Thank you.